For the first time ever since the fuel blockade has been happening in Mali, Mali's leader finally said what everyone already knew was happening. Because earlier this week, General Assimi Goïta, he got on TV early November 2025 and basically admitted the truth. People are dying out here. He's talking about convoy escorts getting ambushed on the roads, tankers catching fire, exploding, people basically burning to death inside those trucks that are trying so hard to convey petroleum fuel so that Mali will function as a normal country. This is huge because for weeks, the government of Mali barely said anything, while this emergency just got worse and worse by day. What's happening in Mali right now is one of the worst disruptions to everyday life the country has seen in years. We have a militant group. They are linked directly to al-Qaeda. We call them JNIM, and they are systematically hitting every fuel supply route they can find. They are creating these massive shortages across Bamako, the capital, and pretty much everywhere else in the country. The truck drivers coming from Senegal and Ivory Coast, those are the countries that supply basically all of Mali's fuel. These guys are getting attacked on convoy routes. In Bamako itself, people are telling reporters they are checking multiple gas stations, driving all over the city and finding nothing. Zero fuel anywhere. Now, the government had to shut down schools nationwide late October. We even reported it. Why? Teachers and students couldn't get to class without fuel for transportation. Now, here is the thing that's really getting exposed. This crisis is showing how vulnerable Mali's economy actually is. Mali, being a landlocked country, it has no coastline at all. They don't also produce petroleum. They don't refine it either. They depend almost entirely on imports from their coastal neighbors. So when those supply routes get attacked, the entire economic system starts to break down. Everything falls apart. Now, what's the regional response looking like? We already have Niger Republic. They are part of the alliance of Sahel states with Mali. They have been sending fuel convoys to help out. Even Russia has also joined in to find a way to solve this problem because they announced they are going to supply petroleum products to Mali. But here's what this really shows us. They have this immediate scramble for solutions, that's for sure. But there's also these bigger questions about Mali's economic dependencies, about how Mali is depending on a lot of other countries because they aren't going away anytime soon if this dependency continues. Of course, there's nothing they can do about the dependency because they don't have access to the sea and they don't produce petroleum themselves. So they will continue to depend on outsiders to help out in this difficult situation. So in this episode, we're going to break down exactly how Mali's fuel blockade turned into this full-blown national emergency. We are looking at what this crisis tells us about economic vulnerability in landlocked African nations. And we are examining why all these responses from the region, from Russia, from Mali itself, what they actually mean for Mali's future and the broader Sahel. Let's get into the facts. So for weeks, straight through September and October 2025, while Mali's fuel crisis was getting worse by the day, the government wasn't saying much of anything. They were giving these limited statements that didn't really capture how bad things actually were on the ground. Then early November rolls around and General Assimi Goïta gets up and addresses the nation. And he finally admits what has been really going on, the actual human cost of this crisis. According to multiple reports from early November, that is basically this week, Goïta was up there and talking about the dangers these fuel convoy escorts are facing every single day. He's saying people are dying in ambushes on the roads, tankers are catching fire, people are burning to death inside them. This is the first time Mali's leader really laid out how deadly this crisis has become for the people trying to keep fuel flowing into the country. The timing of all of this, it matters a lot. Throughout October, you had fuel stations in Bamako running completely dry, empty. People were reporting these massive lines and hours of waiting. And when they finally get to the pump, there's nothing there. International media was documenting people searching across multiple stations without finding a drop of fuel anywhere in the city. But by late October, things had gotten so bad, the government had to shut down schools nationwide. Mali's Ministry of Education suspended all classes from October 27 to November 9. So basically, we are hoping that this November 9, which is next week, that the schools will finally open by the time November 9 comes around. So they specifically said it was because of fuel shortages, because teachers couldn't physically get to work, kids couldn't get to school. We are talking hundreds of thousands of students affected across the entire country. Goïta's November address came right when infrastructure was falling apart. Reports, they showed electricity supply in Bamako had dropped significantly. Why? Because the thermal power plant, they all run on diesel fuel. No fuel, less power. So some neighborhoods, we are seeing huge reductions in their daily electricity supply. Even healthcare facilities, they were worried about keeping their generators running for essential services. I'm talking about surgeries, vaccine storage, critical care. Now, Goïta's acknowledgement, it was a real turning point in how the government was communicating about the crisis. Instead of downplaying things or just focusing on security operations like before, Goïta is talking directly to Malians about people dying, about the challenges they are facing trying to secure these supply routes. But this admission, they raise some serious questions. What actually caused this crisis? How extensive is the threat to these supply routes? And what options does Mali really have to fix a situation that is affecting basically every part of daily life? Let me break down the situation that Mali is currently going through right now. Mali is landlocked, completely stuck in the middle of West Africa with no access to the sea. They don't produce petroleum. They don't have refineries. The country relies almost entirely on fuel imports from neighbors, especially Senegal and Ivory Coast. Trade data shows Ivory Coast exports massive amounts of refined petroleum to Mali every year. In 2022, petroleum products were a major chunk of trade between the two countries, millions and millions of dollars worth. Now, the main supply routes, they run from ports in Senegal and Ivory Coast through these road corridors connecting to Bamako and other big cities. There is this key route, they call it the Northern Corridor. It links Bamako to Dakar in Senegal and handles a huge portion of Mali's total trade, not just fuel, I mean everything. Now, this dependency on outside fuel and specific transport routes, economists call it structural vulnerability. So when those routes get disrupted, Mali has got extremely limited alternatives and they don't have strategic petroleum reserves to fall back on either. Nothing stored for emergencies. Now, the group that is disrupting these routes is called the JNIM. Everyone just calls them JNIM because it's easier to remember. It's a long jihadi name they have there. So this organization came together in 2017 when several militant groups in the Sahel merged. They have pledged allegiance to al-Qaeda. They have been fighting government forces across Mali for years, especially in the central and northern regions. Starting September 2025, JNIM systematically ramped up attacks on commercial fuel convoys coming into Mali. This was coordinated. It was also strategic because security analysts and media outlets, they report the militants set up actual checkpoints and blockades in Kenya's region. That's a critical transit zone in western Mali where roads from Senegal enter the country. They also hit routes near the Nioro du Sahel, another major junction point. We saw multiple attacks on fuel tankers during September and October. Reuters even reported in mid-September that at least 40 fuel tankers, they got burned in an attack linked to these al-Qaeda affiliated terrorist groups. So the attacks, they kept coming through October. Different sources give different numbers, but multiple media outlets were reporting over 100 vehicles affected by late October. Now, the human cost, it's all documented. Media reports confirm drivers and convoy escorts have been killed in these attacks. One Ivorian transport company confirmed some of their employees died in late September. Interviews with drivers still working in these routes, they are absolutely terrified. One driver told Arab News in early November, he said drivers never know if they are coming back alive, but they keep going because Mali needs the fuel. Now, JNIM is using this attack strategically. Security analysts tracking the group say JNIM released statements and videos in early September announcing their blockade actions in western Mali. They are citing the Malian government restriction on fuel sales in rural areas as justification. Those are policies Mali put in place to keep these terrorists from getting fuel. But those same policies, they affect regular civilians who need fuel for farming and transport. Now, the strategy has been devastatingly effective. By hitting these critical supply choke points, they are not just stealing fuel or making money. They are demonstrating that the government can't protect essential infrastructure or guarantee basic economic functions. So, by late October 2025, Mali's fuel shortage wasn't theoretical anymore. It was hitting every single part of daily life in ways that showed just how fragile modern society becomes without petroleum. The capital, Bamako, complete chaos at fuel stations. Reporters documented lines stretching for blocks and blocks, people waiting hours, sometimes overnight, hoping for deliveries that might not even come. So when tankers did finally arrive, stations would sell out in hours, sometimes in minutes. People were desperate. But here's what made October different from before. Even emergency services started struggling. Hospital administrators told media they were rationing generator use. Think about that for a second. In a country where power grids already struggle constantly, hospitals now depend on generators for everything from operating rooms to vaccine refrigeration. No diesel available means choosing which services to maintain and which to cut. Public transport collapsed in many areas. The minibuses and shared taxis that millions of Malians use every single day, they couldn't operate without fuel. People started working hours to work. Others just stayed home because they had no way to get anywhere. Now, the economic ripple effect, it is massive. Markets saw reduced foot traffic because businesses reported workers not showing up at all. Not because they didn't want to work, they basically couldn't get there. Agricultural areas got hit particularly hard. October's harvest season in parts of Mali, farmers need fuel for equipment, for transporting crops to market. Without it, crops sit in fields. Food that should reach cities, they don't move. This has created a double crisis. Fuel shortages in cities, potential food shortages developing as distribution networks completely break down. Now, the government response in October showed just how severe this was getting. Beyond closing schools, they started implementing fuel rationing schemes. Priority went to essential services, hospitals, security forces, critical infrastructure. But even with rationing, supplies kept running short. What October 2025 really showed us was how quickly fuel shortages cascade through an entire society. It's not just about cars and generators. It's about every single system that depends on petroleum. I'm talking about food distribution, healthcare, education, security, commerce. So when fuel stops flowing, modern life essentially freezes in place. So while Mali struggled through October, its regional allies started mobilizing. The response revealed both solidarity between neighbors and the limits of what regional capacity can actually do when facing systematic crises like this. Niger Republic stepped up first. As part of the Alliance of Sahel States, that includes Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger together, they started organizing fuel convoys to Mali immediately. This wasn't just simple charity. These three countries formed their alliance partly because they all face similar challenges. They are all being run by military government. They all face jihadi insurgents, tense relations with Western partners. So when Mali's crisis hit, it became a real test of whether this alliance could deliver practical support when it mattered. Now, the Nigerian convoy faced immediate challenges though. The route from Niger to Mali, they are not exactly highways. We are talking rough roads through areas where security is always questionable at best. Niger is dealing with its own militant problems too, but they kept sending trucks anyway, showing this wasn't just political rhetoric about African solidarity. They were actually trying to help. Even Burkina Faso's response was more limited. They are facing their own severe security crisis, probably worse than Mali in some regions actually. Now, their ability to help was constrained by their own fuel needs and security situation. But even just expressing support mattered politically, showing the alliance wasn't abandoning Mali in crisis. Now, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, their response was complicated. ECOWAS couldn't just ignore a humanitarian crisis affecting millions of people. They issued statements about concerns for civilians while maintaining political pressure on Mali's military government. Now, Ivory Coast and Senegal, the traditional fuel suppliers, found themselves in an incredibly awkward position. Drivers were getting killed trying to supply Mali. Their companies were losing massive amounts of money on burned vehicles and stolen cargo. But cutting off Mali completely would create a humanitarian disaster and potentially destabilize the whole region. So they kept routes open but demanded better security guarantees from Mali's government. So what emerged from this arrangement was this patchwork response, different countries contributing what they could while managing their own serious challenges. It showed both African countries' willingness to support each other and the structural limitations when multiple countries face simultaneous crises. Now let's talk about the human face of this crisis. It's the truck drivers. These guys, and they are mostly men, they are the ones keeping Mali's economy barely functioning while basically risking their lives on every single trip. Interviews with drivers from October and November paint an absolutely brutal picture. One Senegalese driver told reporters that he had been doing the Dakar-Bamako route for over 15 years. He has never seen anything like this before. He described approaching known danger zones. Everyone in the truck goes completely silent. They are listening for gunfire, watching for roadblocks. Every turn could be an ambush. Every stretch of empty road could be a trap. Now the economics for the drivers, they really get complicated. Hazard pay increased. Companies had to offer way more money to get anyone willing to make these runs. But for many drivers, even the higher pay wasn't worth potentially dying for. Some veteran drivers switched to other routes entirely. Younger, more desperate drivers took their places, even with way less experience navigating conflict zones. Now, the attacks weren't random at all. These jihadi groups studied convoy patterns carefully, identified vulnerable spots, hit where escorts were weakest. Now, truck drivers that are supplying this petrol to Mali, they reported seeing burned out tankers from previous attacks still sitting beside roads, left there as warnings. One driver described passing a destroyed convoy where colleagues died just days earlier. The psychological impact, it is absolutely crushing. But here's what is remarkable. Despite everything, these drivers, they kept going. Why? Because some needed the money desperately to feed their families. Others felt this obligation to communities depending on fuel. One Ivorian driver said he thought about all the hospitals that needed diesel for generators. That is what has kept him going, and that is a patriotic African right there. Now, transport companies tried improving security. More armed escorts, varying routes and timing, traveling in larger convoys for safety. But these jihadi groups they adapted to, they hit the front and back where vehicles simultaneously trapping others in between, or they will attack at night when visibility was basically zero. Now, the solidarity among drivers was really striking though. They will share intelligence about attacks, warn each other about dangerous sections, coordinate movement. WhatsApp group became lifelines, real-time updates about road conditions, jihadi activities, safe stopping points. This informal work probably saved countless lives. By November, some companies started refusing Mali routes entirely. The insurance costs, vehicle losses, and human toll became completely unsustainable. This created even more pressure on remaining operators and push prices even higher for whatever fuel actually get to Mali. In late October 2025, right as Mali's fuel crisis peaked, Russia made its move because the Russian government announced it will supply petroleum products to Mali. This wasn't just random generosity. It's part of a much bigger game Russia has been playing across Africa. Russia has been in Mali since late 2021 after France pulled its troops out. The relationship has been growing steadily. Weapons supplies, training programs, and now fuel assistance. Russia is positioning itself as the partner that actually delivers when others won't. The fuel announcement came through official Russian channels. Russia's foreign ministry framed it as supporting a sovereign nation facing unjust pressure. But the message to other African countries was crystal clear. Partner with Russia, get support without all the lectures about democracy and human rights. But can Russia actually solve Mali's fuel crisis? Now, that's where it gets complicated because Russia has oil, absolutely, that's correct. Russia have a lot of oil, but getting it to landlocked Mali, the logistics are absolutely brutal. They will need to ship to West African ports, then truck inland through the same dangerous routes where attacks are happening right now, or fly it in, which is incredibly expensive and limited in volume. Neither option actually addresses the fundamental problem, which is those insecure supply routes. Now, the timing of this announcement wasn't coincidental at all, because while Western embassies were issuing travel warnings telling their nationals to leave Mali immediately, Russia announced concrete support. They are playing up the contrast. The West abandons you in crisis. Russia stands by you. This fits Russia's broader African strategy perfectly. In the Central African Republic, Sudan, Mozambique, Russia is expanding influence through military cooperation, resource extraction deals, political support. They are offering an alternative to Western partnerships, especially for governments facing international criticism. For Mali's government, Russian support provides crucial political breathing room. They can show citizens they have powerful allies who won't abandon them. But here is the reality. Russia's military presence hasn't stopped JNIM's growth. The Wagner forces have taken serious casualties. The fuel blockade happened despite all the Russian security assistance. Some analysts even noted that if Mali's government collapsed despite Russian support, it will seriously damage Russia's credibility across Africa. They are invested now, reputation and resources both on the line. The fuel crisis has become a retest of whether Russian partnership actually delivers tangible benefits or just replaces one dependency with another. Now, the immediate fuel crisis in Mali, it will eventually ease one way or the other. Convoys will resume with better security. Alternative suppliers will deliver emergency stocks. Schools will reopen eventually. Power will stabilize. But this crisis has exposed underlying vulnerabilities that will persist beyond any short-term fix. Mali's situation shows the challenges facing landlocked African nations. World Bank data says there are 16 landlocked countries currently in Africa. These countries face higher trade costs, longer supply chains, complete dependencies on neighbors for port access, add security challenges or political tensions, geographic realities. They create massive economic vulnerabilities. Mali's near-total dependence on fuel imports is not unusual. The African Development Bank says many African nations import most or all of their petroleum needs. While Nigeria, Angola, Libya have substantial oil production, most of the continent depends on imports. This has created energy insecurity, vulnerability to supply disruptions, price shocks, external dependencies. Now, October 2025 crisis in Mali has demonstrated how quickly energy insecurity cascades and escalates into broader disruption when supply routes face threats. Regional responses included some self-sufficiency efforts. The Alliance of Sahel States announced cooperation initiatives. They call it APSA Sahel, the Alliance of Agricultural Seed Producers, launched in 2025, developing locally adapted agricultural seeds to reduce import dependencies. That's one approach to regional self-reliance, though energy and agriculture need different solutions. Now, some Sahel countries explored expanding domestic production. Niger have a refinery at Zinda with expansion plans, but building refinery capacity requires substantial investment and years. Even Mali have petroleum mining ambitions, but no commercial production yet. Mali's resilience deserves recognition despite all these challenges. Despite severe hardships, Bamako didn't see major unrest during October and November, and this goes to show you how the people of Mali are in support of their government. In another circumstance, there will be massive protest for all that has been happening in Mali. But drivers, they kept operating despite the mortal danger. Communities adapted to reduce electricity and fuel. The government maintained functions while seeking solutions. This resilience reflects both Malian endurance and limited alternatives. Unlike wealthier countries where citizens have mobility or resources to buffer infrastructure failures, most Malians had no choice but to endure and hope. The question facing Mali is, will this crisis catalyze structural changes or just be weathered until the next shock? Building genuine energy security needs domestic production, strategic reserves, diversified suppliers, secure infrastructure, and functional regional cooperation. Each solution requires resources, time, sustained commitment. For a country facing insurgency and limited fiscal capacity, implementing comprehensive energy security is formidable. The immediate crisis will pass. The underlying vulnerabilities remain until addressed through structural changes no single fuel deal can provide. Now, if you have watched to this point, this is Frontline Africa, where we talk about geopolitics from Africa's own point of view, where we bring you the stories with the kind of details that mainstream media does everything to avoid. I'm a huge fan of the Alliance of Sahel States. I'm talking about Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. I see their government as the only true revolutionary government in Africa right now. But they are facing a very big challenge, especially Mali. You know, for these terrorists to go this far to disrupt a supply chain as important as petrol, as fuel, that is a serious problem. That is a serious crisis. I must commend the people of Mali for their behavior and how they are handling it. Under normal circumstances in another country, they would be protesting right now. But the kind of support they are showing to their government, it shows that they are really, really in support of what Assimi Goïta is doing to end this crisis. Now, if you want to see more of my videos, maybe consider to subscribe and maybe drop a comment and tell us what you think about this crisis that Mali is going through. I am your host, Ezekiel Enejeta, and I will see you in the next one. It's a bye-bye for now.